Distinguished members of the European Parliament and ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the chance to be able to share a few thoughts with you today as you wrestle with the path forward in combating illegal fishing. Together through the years, many of us have really come to know each other quite well, and it's safe for me to say, my friends, our ocean conferences and other engagements with the United Nations and elsewhere have all brought us together. And I think during my time as President Obama's Secretary of State or as President Biden's climate envoy, we've had a chance to really be able to grapple with the seriousness of this challenge. I hope you know and feel the degree to which I share your passion for conservation and for the work to deal with the truly existential threat that exists today regarding the oceans of the world. What was true across all of those years of our work together is the fact that you cannot solve the crisis of the oceans without solving the climate crisis, and you can't solve the climate crisis without addressing the challenge of the oceans. Early on in my career, when I was Lieutenant Governor of Massachusetts, a coastal state, a fishing state, with a coastline of about 192 miles, I came to really understand the full measure of the culture of fishing, but also the importance of regulations and enforcement in order to try to achieve a balance for all of us in all of our countries. And so for many of you, you know what it means when we say that fishing was really at the core and foundation of our culture. Later, when I was a senator, I wrestled with the challenges of conservation. I actually had the opportunity to rewrite the fishing laws of our country several times over, working with the Republican senator, Senator Ted Stevens from Alaska. And together we got to know more about longliners and draggers and various kinds of fishing than anyone might have imagined. The fact is that I understood that if we don't preserve today, if we don't take care of the culture of fishing, then we lose something extraordinarily precious, but also something practical and economic at the same time. Respectfully, I would say to you now that when it comes to illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing, IUU as we all know it, it is critical that we not only outlaw practices, but that we make certain that we are enforcing those laws and those rules. We have big trawlers who come in with their GPSs turned off and they hide their illegal behavior. We have extraordinary violations of human rights, human trafficking, drug smuggling, and arms, weapons smuggling. The ocean has been abused in many different ways. And today, illegal, unregulated, unreported fishing is clearly the enemy of all of us. It's the enemy of those who care about the climate challenge. It's the enemy of those who are invested in conservation. It's the enemy of every fishing family that follows the rules and tries to do the right thing. And I know that every single one of you understand the stakes today. The oceans, covering over 70% of our planet's surface, is the largest ecosystem and its single greatest carbon sink. It regulates the climate, the planet's entire climate structure. It provides food and livelihood for millions of people. It supports economies across every single continent. It is literally the life support system for the entire planet. And today's levels of illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing are pushing that ecosystem to the very brink. It's undermining also all of the legal fishing operations. It's depleting fish stocks dangerously in many places. And it is jeopardizing very fragile coastlines and ecosystems and communities. IUU is an enormous global economic and security threat. It's a whopping $35 billion cost annually and a burden that disproportionately falls, as we know so often, on the income, on the lowest income, most aggrieved communities of the planet. The more we pull back the veil and understand the scope of IUU fishing, the more crystal clear it is that it is simply modern piracy, too often linked to a whole array of crimes like modern slavery, human trafficking, and corruption. I remember reading a story on the front page of the New York Times a few years ago of a young Cambodian man who answered an advertisement in the paper and went to Thailand to get a job in construction, and literally was chained by his neck to a boat for the next 2 years, where he worked as a forced laborer in their illegal fishing practices. The ecological, economic, and human costs are simply undeniable. The only question is whether we, all of us, who have responsibility and have capacity, will act at a scope and a scale and the speed necessary to try to meet this challenge globally. You've made civil society and the European fishing industry into allies through the EU IUU Fishing Coalition, and you've galvanized collaboration, and you've shared commitment, and you've responded to joint calls to improve fisheries, transparency, and traceability. And of course, your carding scheme is a powerful tool. By promoting fisheries reform around the world, the EU has led by example, protecting the EU market from IUU-sourced seafood and encouraging at the same time other fisheries reforms on a global basis. You've helped to drive critical international frameworks like the FAO Port State Measures Agreement, the IMO Cape Town Agreement on Fishing Vessel Safety, and of course, the WTO's recent agreement on curbing harmful fisheries practices. Now we all need to encourage more nations, including EU member states, to ratify these instruments and to commit to their full implementation. We all know that even the most ambitious frameworks and the strongest rules are only as good as their implementation. So while we have the tools in place, what we still need is the will to use them. And we need that on a broad-based basis. That's why the world is actually counting on your actions now. From decision makers, we need to know that you're willing to support stronger import controls, improve transparency in vessel and business ownership, increase penalties for illegal operators, and expand rigorously protected marine areas. And we need to deploy the full amount of technology that we have available to be able to aid us in this fight. Big data tracking, electronic monitoring, satellite tracking, artificial intelligence, all of these things can revolutionize how we hold people accountable and how we get true enforcement in areas that are hard to reach today. My friends, I really hope that you can redouble efforts and that members of the European Parliament can now reinforce the EU's leadership, not only by supporting best practices and policies, but by ensuring that the EU allocates the resources that are necessary to be able to make the promised impact. Importantly, we also can't shy away from holding accountable those who refuse to obey the rules. Literally, I know it sounds bizarre to some people sometimes because the ocean is so vast. Many people don't think of it as something that has fragility and that can be harmed. But the truth is that we literally have put the ocean in extremis in a way that now it's survival, the survival of the ocean as we know it, to provide us with the food that it provides us and all of the other assets as a sink, as a fighter against carbon, as the place which provides protein to people who live in poverty. There are so many pluses that are just waiting for us to reinforce. And we have to make certain that we're actually going to do that. The newly elected members of the European Parliament have a great opportunity at your fingertips right now. And it's not only a legislative duty. When you really examine what is happening around the planet, we recognize this is also a moral duty, a responsibility. The ocean's health, which means the health of future generations, is literally depending on the decisions that you are prepared to make today and tomorrow and into the near-term future. So I thank you for the work you're about to do, and I certainly look forward to being part of this fight with you as we go forward. Thank you.